Three ladies, Bidyut Mohanty, Diah Ariani Arimbi, Seema Mehra Parihar, for gender and women's issues. And then at the last, we have Professor Mohanty for new globalism in a post-COVID world. Shall we start? Dimitris, are you ready?
I am, yes.
Okay. So, I would like to introduce you. You are journalist and writer, managing editor of Defend Democracy Press and of Utopie Critique, secretary of the Movement of Independent Citizen, SPITA, former director of Greek press agency in Moscow, former advisor of the Prime Minister Andreas Papandreou for East-West relations and for the control over armaments, Athens, Greece. Am I correct?
More or less.
More or less. Okay. Now, can you give us, share your insight on the question of information, communication, technology, media, and you will speak about revolution or counter-revolution, etc. Please, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your invitation to speak to you. Also, I want to congratulate you for this conference, for the initiative to hold this conference, which is, I find, very much topical now. The 20th century has been the century of the revolution of information and of information technologies. It was the control of the flows of information that enabled the totalitarianism of the interwar period. But this version of totalitarianism, although terrible in itself, it seems now like a child's play compared to the possibilities offered by modern electronic and in particular internet and artificial technology, artificial intelligence technology, in order to control people, to control societies and whole countries in a way which is much deeper than at any time before in history. Now, extended possibilities arise not only to control the mind and the emotions of people, thus not only to suppress the free will of people, but to be able even to shape what they think is their free will. Of course, this information revolution is providing us with new formidable and positive and creative possibilities. Without it, we would not be able to speak, to be together now. But to the extent that those technologies are mainly controlled by the world financial capital, their negative potential remains the main and most important side of them. The first weapon of humans in order to dominate over other human beings has been brute force. This weapon has never been abandoned in human, social, and international relations to our days. But at a subsequent level of historical development, the violence of the capital, that is, of the accumulated financial means, of the accumulated money, acquired an equal and sometimes greater importance than brute force. Now, knowledge, the control of information, the control of the flow of information, tend all of them to take at least an equal and probably even more important position as this that brute force or the violence of accumulated capital has exercised in the past as a weapon of domination over societies, but also of domination of one state upon another, of northern states upon southern states, or even northern states upon other northern states. Or, if you prefer, of the financial capital upon northern states. At the same time, we have the prospect of a technological penetration of the mind and of the soul of man, which tomorrow can be combined with interventions in his own DNA because of the developments of genetic mechanics. We have the possibility of a complete control of all the details of personal and social life of individuals, as well as of their beliefs and emotions, of the emotions of every human being upon the planet, and this, at least those who are using internet, and this will constitute one of the greatest ever threats to civilization, if not indirectly to our survival as a species. We saw recently the owners of American television companies, private television companies, to decide to censor the President of the United States. The President of the United States, in theory at least, is the most powerful man on the planet. Then we saw two billionaires from California, the owners of Facebook and of Twitter, to exercise censorship of the president's accounts in their platforms. Some days ago, Facebook announced that it has decided to censor what it considers as views against science related to the coronavirus. I have no sympathy whatsoever for Mr. Trump. I believe he is representing the most extremist and totalitarian, but in a rather primitive way, forces of the dominant system. I'm also shocked by the publicity various irrational absurdities are gaining in the internet. But nobody has commissioned Facebook and Twitter to protect our societies from either Trump or the absurdities of on the internet. Facebook, Twitter, Google, and other similar companies claim to be private companies which provide merely technical services to citizens in order to communicate or research for information. But this is a blatant lie. They do much more than that, and much different than that. Those are private companies controlled by international financial capital, that is, by the center of world power nowadays. Their ability to censor the President of the United States demonstrates not only that they already hold an unacceptable, essentially monopolistic position in the market of ideas, information, and communication. It also proves that they have acquired already a significant part of the political power in the United States and in the whole world, given their global role. These companies exercise also another function. They collect billions of information bits concerning the personal lives, the ideological tendencies, even the sexual life, the diseases, and or the financial dealings of the citizens. They use those informations acquired because they have a monopolistic position without compensating those from whom they have taken them, but also essentially avoiding paying taxes or copyright royalties for commercializing and using their emotions and their ideas. They are not only exploiting citizens, they also acquire and exert the capacity to exploit those informations in order to modify the behavior of citizens against their free will. They can target them with millions of powerful, even personified messages, using all the power their overwhelming technological superiority and the absence of any competition provides them with. Internet platforms do not just exploit people. They are more and more able to shape whole societies and the behavior of people. Their influence is not exhausted in the economic life and behavior of a given society. It is extended to the political sphere, as the Trump incidents have amply revealed. In other cases, it has been proven that Google intervenes by strengthening or silencing whoever it wants through the algorithms of its search engines. They exercise this unchecked, unregulated power not only against crazy theories and clearly fake news. Recently, it was, for example, revealed that they are doing this also to a United States leftist site, the WSWS. Although I do not have the ability to systematically study or prove it statistically, I noticed last summer during the crisis with Turkey that the Greek Google subsidiary chose to send me on my phone, as a rule, an abnormally high number of rather belligerent articles. Their common denominator was that a war with Turkey is both unavoidable and easily winnable for Greece. So this way, they were in a very delicate situation. They were clearly pushing to, to, to a conflict without even taking the responsibility, pretending that they are just informing the public about what is written. By the way, the gradual increasing prevalence of Facebook and Twitter in the communications market has not led to the expansion of a collective national market of ideas, of a kind of electronic agora which would be maybe welcome. On the contrary, it led to its fragmentation into smaller and smaller tribes that are closed in their own worlds and their respective truths, and which do not converse with each other. Today, United States public opinion seems deeply divided into many such tribes that can be grouped into two large categories. One which is still relying on getting information from the established media and the world of political correctness. The other one which is pretending to challenge the established order and the status quo, but in most cases it is supporting purely irrational theories, and in some cases it is developing into ideological sects which increasingly acquire religious characteristics. There is an astonishing similarity between what is happening today in our electronic world with what was happening as the Roman Empire was decomposed and we were entering into the Middle Ages. Of course, the capacity to use internet to manipulate societies is dependent also on the maturity, on the culture, on the intellectual level and tradition of a given society. For example, the French people has been able to use the internet instead of being used through internet in the period leading to the 2005 referendum on the European Constitutional Treaty. This was repeated also during its great revolutionary movement of the Yellow Vests. In other cases, the Spanish, the British, or the French public were able to defend themselves against the effort to use suspicious terrorist attacks in order to determine the political directions of their respective countries on the eve of critical elections. However, there are many more examples of deception and manipulation by the internet. As we said already, the most penetrating and dangerous activity of the internet giants, in close cooperation with the secret services of the United States, of Israel, of a number of other countries probably, is their capacity to collect and process data about the general population and about the elite of a given country, a system already described as surveillance capitalism. Such data collections have already allowed a heavy influence. Maybe they have played a decisive role in the outcome of elections in tens of countries of the world through the cooperation of Google with Cambridge Analytica. It has allowed those companies to gradually, and the secret services which are usually cooperating with them, to gradually collect all the information about everybody. But this is a material basis of a totalitarianism which would make Gestapo, Stasi, or Stalin secret services in comparison a kind of childish of children playing with control. Those tendencies give another dimension also to the problem of neocolonialism. As private companies and secret agencies are able, through the internet, to gather all the available personal information about politicians, businessmen, journalists, military, the intellectuals, and their relatives in a given country, this country is gradually becoming a kind of data colony. It can hardly do anything. Its own elite is manipulated in a way and depth very rarely seen in history. Modern internet totalitarianism is going deeper than the classical one, the classical totalitarianism in other respects also, as events in the USA are proving. We no longer have the usual conflict about the significance of events. Now we have more and more doubts about what the events themselves are. It is not merely the propaganda attacking the truth, it's an attack against the very notion that there is truth, justice, progress in general. It is an attack against the fundaments, the main weapons humans have used for their freedom. In such situations, no illusions are permitted. Domination over information and information flows becomes now a tool of economic exploitation and of political and social control and manipulation. It becomes a new and powerful weapon to dominate whole societies and the world. The situation can become much worse with the introduction of the Internet of Things, of digital money, and of artificial intelligence. From this follows the importance and the need to break down in a decisive way the role of the private-run internet platforms that grow as a cancer within the internet and through it across the whole body of humanity. The platforms now represent a major threat to what remains of democracy and of national sovereignty. They must be dismantled or nationalized, but national control of them is not sufficient. They must be put under international democratic control, given their global role. I understand that some pursuits seem completely unrealistic to many people. Still, history has proven that man is capable of performing miracles that no one expected. If it was not that way, we would still be living in the caves. History sets big for its would-be owners. For example, Westerners hoped that the entry of foreign capital into China would lead to undermining its regime and its national independence, with China following a course similar to that of the Soviet Union. Neither of the two happened. China is now becoming a major economic and technological competitor of the West, challenging by its mere existence the project of establishing a world dictatorship of financial capital and America. It is already largely disconnecting its own internet from the United States-dominated one. Given the global nature of the pressing problems facing humanity, but also of the small likelihood that other countries will join the Chinese internet, it does not seem the best option. Still, such decoupling represents a certain reduction of the scope of the current internet monopoly. India, for its part, has made some important proposals to democratize the internet and remove the control exercised over it by the states and companies of the wealthy North and in principle the United States. Let me add here that there is a second reason that miracles can happen. We are going with almost mathematical certainty into a series of increasingly serious crises of all types. The coronavirus crisis is only the first of these, and probably it's the mildest of these. Those crises will either completely dissolve humanity, facilitating probably a dictatorship of superhumans, a plan clearly pursued by a segment of the current elite, or they will offer the opportunity for great and the motivation for great revolutionary changes that are currently unthinkable. In the coming years and decades, we should expect a great war between dystopias and utopias. Speaking about Facebook, Jeff Spross in the American magazine The Week made a rather radical suggestion in an article saying why we should just nationalize Facebook. Also, former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has suggested a number of quite original ideas, like, for example, creating a British digital corporation which could sit alongside the existing BBC to deliver digital information and entertainment, and even set up a social media outlet to rival Facebook. Corbyn said tech firms could pay a windfall tax to help subsidize the license fee, and he floated the idea of a separate digital service to compete with major streaming and social media firms. Corbyn said also he wanted to see journalists set free to do their best work, not held back by bosses, billionaire owners, or the state. The Labour leader said that one radical idea for the private sector would be to allow reporters to elect their editors when a title or program gets particularly large and influential. He said the plan would leave editors accountable to their staff and their journalistic ethics, as well as to corporate bosses and shareholders. He added, to improve our media, open it up, and make it more plural, we need to find ways to empower those who create it and those who consume it over those who want to control and own it. As I said before, even if nationalization under social control of internal platforms was possible, it would not be enough. The international control of those platforms would also be needed given the great global consequences of their action. By far, the best solution will be the democratization and international control of the internet. But if this is not possible, then perhaps a number of countries of the South and of northern countries, if they wish to join them, should unite to create their own democratic internet. Of course, that requires a serious, long-term commitment to a policy of cooperation with each other in order to deal with the exorbitant power of the West and capitalism. Telesur is one such example, of course, in much smaller dimensions. Up to now, the absolute of such a resolute commitment has undermined such South-South cooperations, which are objectively possible, but sometimes the actors prefer to act in a short-sighted way. The movement of non-aligned was born out of the will and the necessity of the nations of the world to fight against economic exploitation and political domination by Western capitalist states. Now, the front against information domination acquires an equal and probably even more important dimension. It is high time, I believe, for the movement of non-aligned to launch a new great global initiative and to form a huge alliance with social movements, with Democrats, with fighters for national rights around the world, to realize in the new context this old slogan of a new world information order, to stop the modern-day global totalitarianism. I think such an initiative will allow the movement of non-aligned, decades after its birth, to occupy again a prominent role again on the international stage and play a very positive role in world evolution. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dimitris. So your suggestion, join the previous suggestion from previous debate by Professor Patnaik, etc., that the states must play important role in order to control this continuing or growing continuously the domination, information control by private.
But I would add to that that I prefer to use the, without excluding the role of the state, I would prefer to use the term society.
Society, okay, yes.
Which is because, you know, with state ownership of economy and of other functions, we had known problems in the past. So yeah. I think we must think in new terms the process of social control of enterprises, of internet platforms, or whatever. I am preferring those forms of control which give more place to grassroots, to societies, to play effective role, and they don't give all this power to the state. By the way, the Soviet Union was a huge state, and you saw what happened afterwards.
Okay, we will discuss. We will continue. Now, I will invite Kate. You are here. Now, I don't know how should I pronounce your name, Hudson or Hudson?
Hudson.
Hudson. Okay. Hudson, yeah. I'm not English-speaking person. So, yes. So, you are going to speak about very fundamental question related to non-aligned movement, because the non-aligned movement was, or the conference was organized exactly due to the tension of the armament at that time. So it is a very important issue. So I will introduce you according to what you sent to me. Kate Hudson, Dr. Kate Hudson is General Secretary of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. She has held the post since September 2010, having previously been chair of the campaign since 2003. She is a leading anti-nuclear and anti-war campaigner and author of CND at 60, Britain's Most Enduring Mass Movement. Am I correct?
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's your turn.
Thank you very much indeed. And
15 minutes if possible, maximum.
Okay. Tell me when I'm on 14, please.
Now it is 5:13. Okay, so okay. Until yeah.
Thank you very much, and thanks very much indeed for inviting me to participate in this conference. And as you rightly say in your introductory remarks, this is of considerable interest to the peace movement because of the concerns of the Belgrade conference from the very foundation, not only in terms of its opposition to colonization and economic subjection, but really very strongly in their opposition to military blocs, their commitment to world peace, and included within that a really very strong advocacy of global nuclear disarmament. And that thread was to, or has remained, I should say, a constant over the subsequent 60 years. And today we continue to see NAM countries in the leadership of global disarmament initiatives. And that's something that we in the peace movement are very aware of, the role that those countries play. Looking back at the Belgrade conference from the perspective of the anti-nuclear movement today, it's clear that there were many common factors in both its development and that of the anti-nuclear movement. Indeed, my own organisation, the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, was founded in 1958, midway between the Bandung and Belgrade conferences. And CND certainly emerged as part of the radical anti-colonial wave and the changes that were taking place in Western societies and especially in former imperial powers. The late 1950s was a watershed in UK politics, notably when President Nasser, one of the architects of the NAM, nationalised the Suez Canal. Subsequent events, of course, were a massive humiliation for the UK, opening the door to new developments in our society. The end of empire meant a reshaping of society with new and different values, not least the emergence of working class culture and social radicalization, alongside developing international solidarity and support for anti-imperialist struggle. So we could say that the drive to nuclear disarmament and peace, which was so central to the founding of the NAM, became also a vector for mobilization and change elsewhere. Revisiting documents from the time, the continuity with the issues of today is striking. A central debate at Belgrade was on nuclear testing, also a main concern of the peace movements globally. By the time of the conference in 1961, hundreds of enormous atmospheric tests had been taking place, causing immense human and environmental damage, and tests were very often carried out by colonial powers on the lands of their colonies. For 2 years prior to the conference, the US and Soviet Union had informally suspended tests, but Khrushchev announced that Soviet tests would resume, just as the conference was about to start. And then President Kennedy followed up, announcing that the US would also resume testing. So, of course, there was a huge political fallout to that, including the Cuban Missile Crisis. But such was the public and political opposition, and also mass mobilization against nuclear weapons testing, that by 1963, the Partial Test Ban Treaty, which banned atmospheric testing, had been adopted. What is notable is that despite the political differences within the NAM, it has over the last 60 years given significant political leadership in terms of nuclear disarmament. And in my opinion, as an activist, this hasn't just been words, it has been action too. And of course, you will be familiar with the fact that virtually the entire global South is self-organized into internationally recognized nuclear weapons-free zones, which originated in the 1960s. And then the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which was negotiated during the 1960s also. It came into force in 1970. This was in large part initiated by India in an attempt to bring proliferation and spiraling arsenals under control. However, when the treaty was actually signed and brought into force, India and Pakistan both declined to join the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and they asserted that it enshrined nuclear haves and nuclear have-nots in law. They said it was a two-tier double standard system, and regrettably, they both went on to test and develop their own nuclear arsenals. But the point that they made was, in my opinion, absolutely correct, because nuclear weapon states which signed the NPT did not comply with their NPT obligations to disarm. Indeed, they have subsequently attempted to reinterpret the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty as somehow allowing them to retain nuclear weapons. They're very free to talk about, they are the official nuclear weapons states, as if they have a right to have them. Well, they don't have a right to have them. At that time, Israel also refused to join, and as we have found out subsequently, it was helped by Western states actually to develop its own nuclear arsenal, and I'm aware that Britain played a role in facilitating that development. But generally, those signatory non-nuclear weapon states remained so. They chose to not pursue nuclear weapons, with the exception of North Korea, which withdrew from the treaty in 2003. And it's very interesting, the events which led to this withdrawal. They were named, as many of us will remember, in 2003, they were named by President Bush as part of the axis of evil alongside Iraq and Iran. So North Korea withdrew from the treaty, stating that it had a deterrent need to develop nuclear weapons, which is, of course, the same logic applied by the UK government, for example, and other nuclear weapons states. They need nuclear weapons for their security as a so-called deterrent. Throughout these decades, NAM countries have been outspoken at NPT review conferences against these double standards of the nuclear weapons states. And I have been attending these conferences for more or less 20 years now. And it's my experience of these statements and debates that gives me a positive assessment of the NAM contribution to the continued struggle for disarmament. And so we see clearly that while NAM countries continue to press for nuclear disarmament, the nuclear weapons states continue to modernize their arsenals. And Trump, of course, during his presidency, even introduced so-called usable nuclear weapons, as he described them. He abandoned the notion that we have them to protect ourselves. We don't not actually going to use them. They're a deterrent. He abandoned that and has introduced new usable nuclear weapons. And of course, we're well aware of the treaties that he has destroyed, the many treaties like the Iran nuclear deal, the INF treaty, and so on, destroying those treaties which have contributed to arms control and peace and stability. So it was frustration with the NPT and the failure of the nuclear weapons states to comply, the dead end that it became, that led to the founding of a very recent initiative, the humanitarian initiative on the consequences of nuclear weapons. This developed from the NPT Preparatory Committee in 2013. And for 7 years, the kind of debates and discussions, negotiations at the UN flowing from this initiative have been carried out. And last month, this initiative came to fruition in the form of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which came into force on the 22nd of January. So this has come now to fruition. And this treaty makes nuclear weapons illegal for the first time. It outlaws the development, possession, and deployment of nuclear weapons by participating states. The treaty currently has 51 states parties that will be legally bound by the treaty, and an overall supporter base of at least 130 countries. That's over 2/3 of the international community, many of whom will be joining the treaty over the coming months and years. And the NAM has been in the forefront of achieving this treaty, and they have chosen, picking up on Dimitris's point, they have chosen to work closely with civil society in the development of this treaty. They are well aware, of course, that any nuclear weapons states, any nuclear weapons use by states in the global north will disastrously affect their populations, land, and food production. And this has been really a kind of the key to their persistence with this treaty. And as has always been their position, any possession of nuclear weapons is unacceptable because there are no safe hands when it comes to nuclear weapons. And there's one quite remarkable development related to this treaty, which, thinking back to the debate on testing at the Belgrade conference, also shows another continuity, because the treaty also places obligations on signatories to assist victims of nuclear weapons use and testing. And this is very significant development. It also requires environmental remediation for lands contaminated by nuclear testing. And it also explicitly recognizes the disproportionate impact of nuclear weapon activities on indigenous peoples because of the choices made by colonial nuclear powers for their testing sites. So, for example, many of the UK tests were conducted on the Australian First Peoples territories in Emu Field and Maralinga, contaminating large parts of South Australia. There were also 210 French nuclear tests from 1960 through 1995. 17 of these were done in the Algerian Sahara between 1960 and 1966, starting in the middle of the Algerian War. 193 tests were carried out in French Polynesia. So it's the absolute view of the treaty that these historic wrongs must be righted. So the NAM continues to play a major role in other UN disarmament fora too. They particularly press for a Middle East nuclear weapons-free zone, and this is a major item on the NPT agenda. So to conclude, Chair, may I just add my own recent experience of the role of the NAM. Last autumn, after 50 countries had ratified the new treaty, Parliamentary CND, that's the organisation of MPs in our parliament that supports CND, they organised a public webinar viewed by thousands of people to assess the impact of the treaty. And the two keynote speakers were the ambassador of Cuba and the acting High Commissioner of Ghana. The UK government and the nuclear weapons states, persisting with their double standards approach, refused to engage with the treaty, but the global majority supports a ban on nuclear weapons. So I would conclude by saying a key task of the peace movement is to push for change alongside those states that work for nuclear disarmament, and we look forward to a fruitful cooperation internationally. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It is perfect. It is 13 minutes. Bravo. And it's very interesting. Now, we go into one issue, very hot issue that this morning we already evoked about the gender and women's question. Well, in Bandung, all are men. In Belgrade, only one woman, Sirimavo Bandaranaike, as the representative of Sri Lanka. But you are three ladies for 15 minutes. So everybody 5 minutes. It's okay? Who will start? Bidyut or alphabetically? Bidyut, Diah, Seema. Who will start? Bidyut? Yes, okay. Put on your microphone.
Yeah, it is here.
Oh, shall I introduce you quickly?
Okay.
Well, I don't have a lot of, because you never sent me any element of biography. So you are senior researcher, doctor, women studies, yes. Institute of Social Sciences, New Delhi, India. And of course, you are at the same time researchers, scholars, and activists. I witnessed myself, I saw your action, your activities with Panchayat. So
and also culture.
Yeah. So now you go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. So,
5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
It's 22 hours.
5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to discuss the experience of women during the COVID from the perspective of gender equality, gender issues in terms of equality. Now, as the NAM spread, various governments thought of gender equality in terms of preserving seats in the local government, creating self-help group so that women will act as decision makers in the political sphere, and they will also get economic empowerment leading to equality in social sphere. But the COVID showed various fault lines, and it revealed that women are still discriminated against in terms of in multiple spheres. Women in informal sector lost their jobs. They become full-time caregiver, looking after the health, public health, education, health, and food security of the family member. At the same time, they become subjected to various forms of violence, including domestic ones. But women leaders, self-help group workers become frontline workers and provided all kinds of support to the migrants, risking their own lives. The COVID challenged the women to in uh, in general and women in tribal area in particular to think boldly and try to overcome all kinds of obstacles. But they needed systemic support from the government by providing them with welfare policy in every sphere, public education, health, and etc., etc. In addition, they also needed the democratic patriarchal structure because they are the repository of indigenous knowledge as how to look after the health, nutrition, and providing employment opportunities. As for example, as soon as the lockdown was declared, without any prior notice, migrants started coming back. Women leaders, with in consultation with the villagers, started regenerating the forest and started nurturing the nature, yielding, I mean, so that the trees started yielding plenty of fruits, flowers, wild animals, which become healthy food for them, and they also became, they also used the local herbs so that corona did not touch them, particularly in the tribal areas. Regenerating forest provided them with job opportunities with the help of Norega, MG Norega, Mahatma Gandhi Employment Guarantee, Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. It's a right-based scheme. You have to have 100 days, at least 100 days, now 200 days, and guaranteed employment with minimum wage if you demand it. Skilled, mostly unskilled. Nowadays they have included the skilled ones also. So, and in the process, they maintained all the, beg your pardon. They maintained the balance with nature, and they also did not anger. I just messed up everything. Just 1 minute, yeah. So what I'm trying to tell you that they try to maintain the nature because they are the inheritors of the indigenous knowledge, and I have talked about that. So what I'm trying to tell you that they're the trusteeship of the traditional knowledge, and they don't want to anger the mother nature. In the process, they showed the value of ecological civilization where the human being and the nature maintain a balance, mutual coexistence. No, no person dominates the other. No, nobody dominates. People think equal, distribute things equally, and maintain a peaceful life. And the migrants don't have to go back to the city under distress condition. They go on their own condition, own terms. And, the slums don't increase in the city area. Now, in nutshell, we must, in the process, it showed the hidden agency of women, which they themselves realized, okay, we have something to contribute to the society so that the sanity returns. Here, the market doesn't dominate. The market-led growth doesn't dominate. On the other hand, it becomes subservient to the needs of the villagers, people, and here the social media, the internet doesn't spread fake news. Thank you.
Next.
Darwis, who is next?
Yeah, sorry, my microphone. So now, Diah, 5 minutes, it's okay?
Okay.
Well, I introduce first Diah, Professor of Cultural Studies, former Dean, now not, you are not Dean anymore, huh? Former Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, and also, well, Cultural Studies and specialized in Gender Studies, Universitas Erlangga, Surabaya, Indonesia. Okay?
Okay. Okay, thank you, Pak Darwis. I'm just following up what Bidyut mentioned about gender issues, especially related to NAM and then COVID-19. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, Indonesia held the Bali Democracy Forum in a hybrid form last year, December last year, and this 13th Bali Democracy Forum was entitled Democracy and the COVID-19 Pandemic, which I think is very relevant since the pandemic has affected not only health and the global economy, but also democracy. And as we're talking about NAM, I think one of the things that NAM contributed is the idea of, or the recognition of the mutual interest of the third world, the quote unquote the third expanded beyond the context of the Asia and Africa. The first NAM summit in the past was focusing on the shared condition of suffering, the effects of colonialism, imperialism, and racism. We talked about that already. And its acknowledgement of the lasting legacy in the form of neo-colonial practices, incursion of national debts, and economically crippling forms of economic aid speak to the contemporary concerns within the framework of Global South. That's, I think, the challenges are still now, but with the COVID-19 pandemic, everything has changed, especially in Indonesia. Last year, there was this video conference ministerial meeting for the Alliance for Multilateralism. Indonesian Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi said that no country is able to overcome this crisis alone. In this connection, we have no other option but to count on the World Health Organization to be a platform of cooperation among countries. So this is this reminds us of the very idea of NAM. And then December last year on the special session of the UN General Assembly to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, she also made a speech there saying that the vaccine discovery is not the end of the challenge. Our next task is to ensure the vaccine can be accessed and distributed fairly for all. And the UN must be able to help member countries to increase their vaccine distribution capacity, both in terms of infrastructure and human resource capacity. And I think Devon mentioned about the NAM Summit, May 24th of May 2020, where Indonesian President Joko Widodo also recalled for the purpose of the establishment of the forum, this, the NAM, which the second largest grouping of states after the United Nations. He was calling the member of the NAM to fight mutual enemy, imperialism and neo-colonialism. He also addressed that the pandemic was far from over, and therefore he invited NAM members countries to act in a prompt, careful, and strategic manner. He said, let us translate the idea of political solidarity into concrete collaboration. We need to work hard to get fair and timely access to COVID-19 vaccines and medicine at an affordable price. So the importance of strengthening cooperation to maintain global supply chain of medical and food supply is very, very important. That's on the level of discourse, I suppose, because how then it affects women, especially, unfortunately, challenges is still there. According to the McKinsey Global Institute, as the COVID-19 continues to affect lives and livelihoods around the world, we can already see that the pandemic and its economic fallout are having a regressive effect on gender equality, especially because many women work on the informal sector, and women's jobs are, according to the Institute, 1.8 times more vulnerable to this crisis than men's job. Women make up 39% of global environment, but account for only 54% of overall job losses. So because of the virus significantly increasing the burden of unpaid care, which is the care are usually carried by women. And this is among other factors that women's employment is dropping faster than average, even accounting for the fact that women and men work in different sectors. So under the idea of spirit of inclusion that I think NAM was about, is still about, in Indonesia, gender parity, disparity is still very, very high. As women, especially, many of them work as caregivers at home, in communities, especially. They are also at risk of infection, loss of livelihood, and existing trends point to less access to sexual and reproductive health and the rise in, especially in domestic violence. So women are more vulnerable to COVID-19 related to economic aspects, as I mentioned earlier, because the existing gender inequalities, and also that women have a greater barriers, especially in terms of labor force participation. So removing this thing will be a bigger role in society and reap the economic and social benefit. And then with the COVID-19, women are hit hard, not only economy, in terms of economy, but also in terms of domestic violence. Domestic violence against women, girls, female healthcare workers, as well as migrant or domestic worker, the numbers are increases. According to the Indonesian Women Commission, the domestic violence towards women has raised 75% since the pandemic. So there are new 90 cases per month because of this pandemic. So I think this is where NAM solidarity and also Bandung principle are very, very important for us, because one of the NAM solidarity is about equality and mutual benefit and peaceful coexistence. And Bandung principle also talk about respect for fundamental human rights, and women's rights are definitely human rights. So I guess NAM and Bandung principle must be the foundation for gender equality. I think that's all from me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, Seema, 5 minutes. Your microphone, Seema. Well, Seema. Seema is associate professor, doctor, geographer. So you are geographer, but also you publish a huge book of Gender Atlas of India. And you belong to Khudori Mal College, University of Delhi, India. Now,
all right.
Your time.
Thank you, Darwis. I just rushed anyway. So now, yes, and today I just want to share with you, today in the morning, we also launched a digital atlas, the first deliverable of the digital atlas, Women Empowerment Atlas of India. And so anyway, coming to the gender, I would like to, because it's a welcome session and Diah has given lots of statistics, and they are also talked about Bandung principles of, equality and coexistence. But somewhere along the line, when I think of gender and after COVID, I'm just thinking, are we thinking of, are we really into that coexistence? Are we also thinking, on one hand, we're talking about togetherness, we are talking about equality, we are talking about everything that is just right, But somewhere along the line, COVID has also shown us that domestic violence has increased. COVID has also shown us many other negative things also. But coming to that, I would just like to show you one map, if Darwis will allow me to show.
Yes,
that,
please.
Okay, I'm just sharing my screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Let me just, yes. This is women in decision making. In case if you have a look at it, first of all, we all are, of course, when Diah is talking, Bidyut is talking, or Seema, is talking. I would first of all, before showing you, I just thought that this map, I should just put it there. And plus, I should put this graph there. And remember that this graph that you're seeing of participation of women in parliament globally, this is 40%, this is 50. We are still in no place in the world, except in Australia and New Zealand, nowhere in the world you're finding it crossing 50%. But before coming to this, I would definitely like to say, thank you, Darwis. Thank you, Darwis. Till 2015, you were not allowing us to even have a gender session. We never had gender. We literally bullied or forced you to have gender in the conference. And now he's finding it so difficult. In all of the sessions, you have one or the two co-chairs. But in gender, he's having three empowered women all there, led by Bidyut.
And you have 5 successive sessions
yes.
on gender, dedicated to gender.
And plus, all are talking about different things in women, women issues they all are raising. And that is something, which is such a treat to watch. And you're giving us the space to discuss. I think so for me, that is the achievement. And that is something which we are going to carry it forward. Now, coming to that, where Bidyut is talking about always about the panchayat level, about the grassroots level. And, she comes out with those real life issues. In case, unless and until we start working from the grassroots level, we cannot think of women to coming up. But COVID has taught us several lessons. COVID has taught us that we are still not wanting women to come in this decision-making role. When I say women in decision-making, I think so we are not liking it. When I say we are not liking it, I'll just give you a little bit of the data. The data says that, in India, at least, and the world over also, it was just similar, 77% of the workforce were women at different health levels. But when it came to decision-making levels, they were only 4.7%. And so, who will do it? Even, your PPE kits were never made for women in the beginning. Women were funded. They thought only men will wear PPE kits. And it was world over, everywhere. And then in some places, women were not allowed to go in the hospital also. But like men were preferred. The preference was there also. Can you just imagine these things? And somewhere along the line, then we thought that at least like, once we're working the ground, we're working there, maybe that, the system, immunity system is much more stronger. And for me, when you have a look at this, if you have a look at this graph, you find the gender equality in political decision making. If you look at it, if you look at this graph, you find that gender equality in political decision making, this red box, I'm not asking you to look at the figure, but we are still very much away. Men are here and women are still here. Why are we here? I wish people like Darwis, people like Professor Mohanty, people like, all, one and all, and even women for that matter. Let's strive hard so that after 5 years, when we come to this conference again, we may be able to show the graphs, we may be able to show the data, which is totally different. Now, in case if you have a look at it, the world looks like, with the same this thing, if you see it here, like, India, these are all orange shades and the brown shades, in case if you have a look at it, this is participation of women in parliament. You find that 0.01 and then you find more than 40. Where all can you see this dark, this thing? You're finding more of light orange and light this thing, and India also somewhere along the line. But don't you feel, if you look at this map, that which boundaries, which borders are we talking about? So many places in the world look so similar, but they all are having same tone. And that's something again in the decision making. Out here also, if you look at the panchayat, so this is especially a graph for Bidyut. In case if you have a look at it in panchayats also, here you may still say that, like, if you look at the 50, this is a 50 cut of where I put this cross. In case if you have a look at it, it is still a heartening figure. Bidyut something, so I think so I will give this thing to Bidyut, and people like Bidyut who are working for women at the grassroots level, at least you're finding it. See, we women, I just want to tell everyone, every man and every woman who is not so much gendered, or there may be men who are more gendered. We are not wanting even 51. We are just wanting 50-50. We understand the meaning of parity. We understand the meaning of that. And we just say, like, and plus that was the reason I said, and today you all feel jealous. We three are friends. Bidyut, Diah, and Seema. Like, sometimes like women fight together. We may not be. Bidyut, I know that, like, I somewhere along the line slightly occupied, or maybe not so good a person, like in this conference, in the arrangement, etc., etc. But Bidyut never got, angry with me. In the heart of heart, she must be saying, I want Seema, to be involved much more than this. But again, we three are friends. That's what the women power would be. If you allow us, you give us opportunities to be together, and definitely we'll all be here. Now, in case if you look at the participation in Rajya Sabha, so this is something which I would say, please celebrate Chhattisgarh. Please celebrate Rajasthan. Imagine Rajasthan, that desert region. Please celebrate that, because you're finding at district level, it's more than 50. Even at the block level, it is, it is this thing. And even at gram level, that blue line, if you see this blue line is something which is crossing 50 in so many places. Uttarakhand, but right now where we had this disaster, which just happened, and why it happened, that's another story altogether, for which we can have this thing. Now, participation of male and female in state assemblies and so on, participation of women in Rajasthan, again out here, you may find that these are the ones which are there. So these are just numbers. These are not percentages. We do not have, for these states, we do not have data to tell you in percentage. I only had to use the data in terms of numeric numbers in India. Isn't it sad? This is the latest, this is this thing. I'll just show you one more slide. I think my 5 minutes would be up. So that's fine.
Because after that,
okay.
Professor Mohanty will not have time.
1 minute. Are you allowing me 1 minute?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, now this is women in higher education. You find that the statewide gender parity index or district-wise gender parity index, again, is in a dismal state, very bad state. We do not have a gender parity at all. And this is something, why I'm showing you this map, because so that, like, right now we were not having a mathematics class. So this is what it is. And very conveniently, now I'm showing you this slide. Very conveniently, if you have a look at it, very conveniently what people do, when they want to show, they change these ranges. They change these ranges and you see a lot of red shades. This is a map made with the same data. Some are looking red and some are not looking red. And it's a different because we become very convenient. When I want to prove something, I change my data, I change my variables, I change my interpretation of the variables. Sex ratio is something, one variable, which at least in the gender conference, when we're talking about, it's like, you know, the child is born, number of females and number of males. What are we? So all those principles, we all should definitely, discuss about our vulnerability, discuss that we do not want pampering. We women don't like pampering. We want you all to just treat us equal. Just feel from your heart that we are equal. And even like, you know, that space what Darwis you have now, you're giving us, because I remember in the first conference, I want to end up with that. In the first conference, when, you know, I really literally had to force you that please give us gender. Till that time, what was happening was that they were recognizing women. Yes, there are articles written in that book, in your first book, that article is written about women, and it's like women in NAM, women in this thing, but the interpretation was wives and daughters. We women are more than wives and daughters. We women have the potential, we women have the capacity to do hard work. We are natural multiple taskers. We can do many things together. Give us work, we will slog hard, and we'll show you that we all can together make this world a happy place, very nice place with a bright future. Thank you very much. And I welcome you all to the gender agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema. You can put off.
Yeah, I'm just doing it.
Yeah. So now the last speaker, Professor Mohanty, I have introduced this morning. So, well, in fact, I want to say something about the speeches of Bidyut and Seema, because many of us do not know what is panchayat, what is etc., because it is very Indian notion and very Indian reality. But we will discuss later. Okay. Now, Professor Mohanty, I don't need to introduce you anymore. You are professor of political sciences and scientologies from New Delhi University. And now you will propose, that is your proposal to speak about the world, post-COVID world. Your microphone.
So you have to unmute, yeah.
It's now 10:30 p.m. in India.
Yeah, now, yeah.
But I have been energized by this, not only the three women speakers, but also by Dimitris and also Kate. By the way, Kate, we have another CND India scholar, Achin Vinayak, also speaking in this conference.
Yeah.
Now we will have two sessions on new globalism in a post-COVID world. Today, I'm going to introduce the main idea. The main idea is that it seems that the rulers are getting back to business as usual, at least in India, China, of course, even before India, and other countries. And EU and America, US, even though they are in the peak of their COVID crisis, second wave and so on, they also are talking about the usual business, the usual pattern of their politics and economy to get back, their development process and global neoliberal process to be resumed. Now, that is the tragedy. They don't realize that COVID once again brought to the fore the basic contradictions in this capitalist political economy. The type of industrial revolution last 200 years, as it evolved into a system of a very great exploitation, generating gross inequalities, class inequalities, racial inequalities, gender inequalities, and above all, regional disparities among countries and within countries, and climate change, environmental destruction. Now, COVID brought that out very clearly, because the greatest victims were the poor, the migrant labor, the blacks in US, the blacks and other minorities in Europe, England, poor people, black and white, poor people in US still suffering. And in fact, President Biden has appointed a section in the COVID task force that is addressing just the equity dimension, the equity group in their task force. How to recognize the fact that this inequality, and by the way, and this came up earlier today in our conference also, that this virus is the product of this animal to man transmission, is the product of deforestation and destruction of the natural environment, which circulate these viruses more easily, especially to carriers and to agents who don't have the immunity, don't have the antibodies. Therefore, the more we carry on with this development model, the more viruses, the more such epidemics and pandemics we are going to encounter. Now, that is why I think the NAM perspective, the Bandung perspective tells us that the existing global model of development, the political economy of capitalism that is ruling the whole world today, first through colonialism it came, now through neoliberal globalization it is getting revived and consolidated with new consensus among the elites that this is good for everybody. Ultimately, everybody will benefit. Sorry, the evidence says we have more inequalities, more climate change, more violence, causing more terrorism, more alienation, causing more resort to violence, and so on. Now, what is the alternative? And this is what the NAM perspective suggests. I think we have to reorient this discourse to have the development-related issues reformulated as a new pattern of production. Right now, it is techno-capitalist production that is consumption-driven, that increases human needs and makes more and more needs to be fulfilled by capitalist production. And then they create a supply chain which is based on the capitalist principle of specialization, so that maximum profit is generated. And this is technology driven in such a way that, as Dimitris was pointing out, the AI, Internet of Things, and digital money, and and the like, they are going to create new monopolies and replacing human labor, distancing humans from nature even more rather than creating more harmony. So that type of production has to be questioned. This is where Gandhi, and remember, for Marx, meaning of socialism was really ending alienation created by capitalism. So it was to aim at freedom. Therefore, both Marx and Gandhi would tell us that non-alienating production process, a production process that creates respect for all kinds of labor. Right now, what? Right now, it is gradation of labor. All class societies, racial societies, patriarchal societies have graded labor. Manual labor is the lowest, and that is the basis of patriarchy also. Household work is undermined, undervalued. And then skilled labor, mental labor, philosophical labor, high intellectual property-oriented secret clues to high-tech knowledge. So gradation of knowledge, gradation of labor, and gradation of economy. So agriculture is a backward economy. Industry is advanced economy. Within industry, manufacturing is backward, services are better, and high-tech services, financial and high-tech services are even better. That kind of gradation of economies and labor has to be replaced by valuation of all forms of labor equitably. So from that kind of production, we have to move to nature-friendly, equitable production where all humans are essentially workers. All humans are essentially workers. They are the creators of civilization. And where objective of production is building a just and happy society. Society of equality, freedom, justice, and sustainability. Similarly, a new discourse on security has to be launched, initiated by Bandung and Nam, initiated during the anti-colonial struggle, peace. I think Kate Hudson, emphasized this point, and the Belgrade speeches emphasized that point. Now, how do we question the neorealist thrust on security, which is militaristic, competitive? It's all about balance of hard power. Even soft power is a form of hard power, the capacity to manipulate and push forward. So soft power is not really benign cultural power. It is part of the balance of power notion of security, where technology of surveillance, today surveillance state and global surveillance systems, intelligence sharing, and control, subjugation, violence, killing, continuing to increase. That is the notion of security. From that, we should move to people's security, environmental security, food security, basic needs security, security providing cooperative peace, where each individual, group, and region and nation is mutually dependent as equals, helping one another, enjoying material, cultural, and environmental security. And this is where the Ubuntu framework is so important. I exist because you exist. We have to help each other to exist, and that is the notion of security. So we have to have a new notion of security where health, education, security are more important than the so-called national security with armed guards. Similarly, we have to have a new form of politics. New globalism has to have a new form of politics. They never used the term globalism. They used first colonialism as globalism, and now globalization of the capitalist, monopolistic type as globalism. We want a new globalism, which will be our globalism, where a new kind of politics from right now, what is it? Centralized politics, political centralization, and COVID saw highest level of centralization. Leaders controlling from the top to the grassroots level. And the communication order, Dimitris already explained the monopolistic communication order, which is now the controlling all of us. And this is globally controlled now and nationally, and there may be monopolies replaced by oligopolies. I mean, a Chinese internet system and an American internet system and a European internet system, 3 oligarchies don't make all that difference. We want a new communication order of democratic space for everybody. Currently, politics is oriented to achieving high economic growth. Politics for growth. That is why the farmers' agitation in my neighborhood is being, it's now 80-day-old farmers' agitation, and government is formally only having dialogue, but repressing them in all possible ways. And because they think that the agricultural reforms that they have brought about, they're good for farmers. Farmers say it's not good for us, please repeal those laws. But governments insist, and they are using all communication power and other powers, political mobilization to push that line. And that reduces the democratic system that we have to only procedures of governance. Now we have had a whole generation of politics disappearing and being replaced by governance, from politics to governance. That is administration to have efficiency in results, rather than commitment to equality, freedom, self-government, justice, reason. So reason debates, I mean, the TV debates are not reason debates, they're emotional exchanges only. That has to be replaced by a decentralized, participatory self-governance, building an egalitarian social order where individuals, groups work together, helping each other to enjoy equal rights, irrespective of class, gender, race, caste, sexuality, religion, and where right to natural and cultural resources of your region are guaranteed to the people of the region, and they share it with the rest of the world on mutually agreed terms. That is the right to earth. That is the, the Bandung perspective, the Belgrade perspective of equality. A new global solidarity. I think today, the solidarity that was discussed earlier today was fantastic. And Vilas's film was wonderful in that.
Yeah.
And Diah also mentioned that. A new global solidarity to work for these values need to be put at the center of the global discourse. Independence, sovereignty, equality, peace, and human rights are the core values of Bandung and Belgrade. And therefore, I think new globalism has to be constructed as a new discourse, new basis for program of action, basis for people's movements, and basis for policy frameworks that we must persuade our rulers all over the world to discuss. And that is the lesson, once again, from this big crisis that COVID has presented before us. So new globalism has to be a new perspective in the Bandung Belgrade tradition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pano. Now we come to the end of the. I mean, if you still, of course, if you still want to say something, there's no problem. But times is now past. No? I see that Grajong, you want to say something? You raise hand. Grajong.
No, this means congratulations to the last,
okay.
last panelist, but I think that is very important, many important aspects and perspective, and I spontaneously think that the form which could be helpful to organize the anti-globalism movement in the spirit of Bandung is, you know, to organize common communication.
Yeah.
When we could permanently share our opinions, visions, and also different, also news movement, which have to fight against the oppression in their own country, could be, you know, could have a place to share their ideas and problems. And I think that this new kind permanently functioning communications would be one kind of salvation of this newly oppression.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there are many points to discuss. For example, I am intrigued that Professor Mohanty proposed the term new globalism, but I am afraid that there will be many versions of new globalism.
Sure.
So it will be a debate. This is your introductory presentation for the 2 sessions that you are going to chair on Friday, I think. I don't know if you still want to continue, but time's already over according to our time frame. But of course, we are free if you want to continue. Kate, yes, no, you just thank you very much. You just say thank
Darwis,
you. Yes,
Darwis, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I'll be very short and precise. Only a couple of points that have emerged. I think 1960s, 50s, and 60s were the period of revolution both against fascism and imperialism. Now we are at the crossroads of counter-revolutions. Counter-revolutions not only of the state and the imperialist forces, counter-revolution also of the social forces. If we look at the grassroots, the counter-revolutionary forces are very, very strong today. There are 2 kinds of fundamentalism that we have been witnessing. One is the economic fundamentalism through the neoliberal forces, which is also aligning with the social fundamentalist forces. For example, in India, the feudal elements are growing strong and stronger day by day. Therefore, to build our strength, or to build our solidarity to fight these counter-revolutionary forces, I think we have to be more active, and also to get ourselves constantly engaged with those social forces from the grassroots to the national, to the regional, to the global level, with all those forces which are constantly fighting either in a fragmented manner or in an integrated manner against all these counter-revolutionary forces. Because we are at, person like me who have at everyday level, day-to-day level, have been negotiating with both the revolutionary forces and counter-revolutionary forces, realize that unless and until we are in a position to connect ourselves, engage ourselves with the forces fighting against its counter-revolutionary forces, our future will not be that bright. I think Rise of Asia provides us a platform to go along with this mission and vision. So these were the few words that I wanted to present before you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akhil. So I think that nobody else want to I don't see any hand.
Can I?
Oh, Azril, yes, please.
Thank you.
Azril is from Peru.
Yeah, but right now,
based in Sweden.
Yes, I was thinking about. It has been hinted in different ways. Two points. We're assuming that this virus, the pandemic, will be eradicated by vaccines or other drugs, pharmaceutical drugs. But there is a horizon where this pandemic will become endemic, that is going to last and become normalized like influenza. And that means we are entering a new stage, a new age of uncertainty with long-lasting virus that in time could evolve to be like influenza, less fatal, less murdering, and more contagious. So this means a new global health order. Now, with this new health situation, most governments are using these restrictive blockades, the measures to close everything, to close the normal, quote unquote, ways of life. And these restrictions are creating lots of discontent. And then you have these revolts, like in the States that was channelized by Trump, or in India with Modi's fanatic followers that burned the effigy of Greta Thunberg that symbolizes the young people fighting for people to be more aware about climate change and its consequences. So let's say a new health global order producing a new unknown political situation where most governments have failed. China failed to stop it in time. Europe failed to, when they repatriated the people, they brought the virus. Europe failed. The United States failed. So we're facing now a growing discontent that can be easily channeled by these nationalist, fascist, manipulations. And then if we speak about a new envisioning, a new globalisms, but globalism was used by an Indian scholar, a good friend, Uman. He says globalism is one way to criticize neoliberal globalization. It rhymes with colonialism, with neocolonialism. So globalism actually is a critical term to look at the kind of neoliberal globalization we don't want in the tradition of NAM. So I think the task now is to engage in a new space, a new health, political, and then cultural space. Some of the speakers have taken this cultural trench. And I want to finish by saying how the strategies of this nationalist populism, like Steve Bannon, who is the architect of people like Trump coming to the presidency. He also advised Bolsonaro's election in Brazil. He's doing that work in Europe successfully. And I think NAM should look at this challenge in the cultural warfare. This is the term that he's using consciously, that we need to enter in the tradition of Gramsci to fight also for the mind. And then that's a big challenge that I would like to put in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Adil. It's an excellent remark. Okay, with this, we close our session and we will meet tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, okay? Well, tomorrow will be divided into 6 parallel sessions and we'll start, in fact, with the opening session because we are supposed to go to Le Havre. The second day is in Le Havre. So it will be opening session at 9:15 until 9:45. And then the session, discussion, working session start at 10 o'clock. Okay? So that's the program for tomorrow. Thank you very much. So have a nice, have a nice dinner, have a nice sleep, have a nice what, I don't know.
Nice mood.
In Montreal,
Nice
in
night.
Delhi, and
Thank you.
France.
Very, very,
Thank
very
you.
full day. Very
Thank you very much.
Darwis,
Yes.
I would like to talk about some organization, I mean, a small organization issue also with Manu, if you can stop for 2 minutes, because I'm supposed to co-chair 4 sessions, but 2 of them are at the same time. So session 5 and session 17 with Professor Mohanty are at the same time. So as we have less speakers on Asia, can I just have 2 sessions on Asia? And so that I can share also.
No, you will share with Nisar, no? You
yes.
can use between Mano Ranjan Mohanty and Nisar ul Haq. You will co-chair Asia.
I know that. I know. I also thought to leave Nishant alone and co-chair the other session. But the point is that there is also a speaker that I'm interested to listen to, and I can shift him to the following session. Then I'll manage in a way or another. I'll manage. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, but there are less speakers on Asia. I inform you. So perhaps for us 3 sessions are even too much.
Oh, really? Oh.
I think so. I can tell you better tomorrow.
Yeah. Send me.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Darwis, for Latin America also a technical question. Are we going to use Zoom or are we going to use?
What is the result of your trial with?
No, I didn't have the chance to do that.
Oh, because
therefore,
I have tried yesterday until midnight with Leonel from Cuba. In fact, it is possible by Zoom, but Leonel is not so at ease with the technology. So he said that I will ask my wife, I will ask my friend, etc., etc. But it seems that it is possible by Zoom, as far as you are not hosting. I mean, it is restricted.
Yeah, I know. There is a VPT. I will try to contact him and let you know. And we have to decide that very early in the morning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you.
Good night.
See you tomorrow.
And see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I hope my students stay. We will discuss a little bit, okay? Alors, mes étudiants, vous restez, hein? On discute un peu.
On est là.